Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Minato betrayed Kushina and she falls in love with Naruto part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. She nodded to herself and then asked Naruto to wash her back. Then after some time they came out. Kushina dried herself and Naruto and then dressed him and herself. They had a light breakfast and walked out. Okay, let's start, Kushina said enthusiastically but stopped when she didn't get a response and looked at Naruto who was in deep thought. She sat down on one knee and looked at Naruto. What is it? She asked. Naruto looked at her and lifting his hand pointed towards her. Kushina saw where his finger was pointing, her breasts. Kushina bonked him lightly on the head. Haven't you just have breakfast? Kushina chided and Naruto looked away. Kushina sighed. I will have to control this habit of his otherwise he will become obsessed with my milk and won't eat any other thing. And when my body will stop producing milk in my breast. Damn, what Naruto would do then? What would I do then? Now it's necessary to control it, she thought with worry etched on his beautiful face. You won't get anything today and in lunch you will eat green vegetables and a little ramen, that's all, she said in a stern voice and Naruto's head snapped towards her, his eyes wide. He then looked down. I understand, he said in a meek voice and Kushina was first surprised then hugged him but she couldn't see a smirk on his cute little lips. I will have my favorite food in the night when you are asleep mom, he thought and break the hug with a smile. Let's start the training, Naruto said and Kushina nodded and stood up. Okay, listen, what you have to do is run around this shrine, okay, as many laps as you can, Kushina said and Naruto nodded with enthusiasm. He was eager to start his training and get stronger like his mom. Kushina make a starting point and they both started running though Naruto's tiny legs couldn't do much but Kushina's heart swelled seeing the pure determination on his cute face. His running was like a light walk in garden for Kushina but she kept a close look on him. His body, his breathing everything to make sure he doesn't overdo it. After 20 minutes she stopped and Kushina decided to take some rest. She was happy that he did 4 laps in 15 minutes. They sat down under a tree and talked for a while about training and Konoha. Kushina had started to tell him events and their relations from Konoha. She also told him about Uzushio and what it was famous for. After half hour they again started the laps and it continued whole day. Laps, rest, laps, rest. Next day she made him do some push-ups and squats with laps around the shrine. She also started to teach him how to read and write. And in 1 month he started to show that he was a smart one and of course Kushina was happy. It continued for next 6 months and after 6 months he was able to read and write but he still had some problems reading and writing hard, complicated and long words. But Kushina continued his teaching and after 1 year he was fully able to read and write. Whatever Kushina taught him he understood in once and whatever she asked him to do, he did it. Now at the age of 4, he was able to run at least 15 laps around the shrine and around 30 push-ups and squats. His monstrous stamina, sheer determination and his mother's support helped him gaining these targets. After completion of 4 years, Kushina increased his physical targets and she added one new fighting style in his daily training and it was Kenjutsu. She made some wooden katanas for practice. But she kept main focus on his body strength and stamina. She also told him history of Uzumaki and Uzushiogakure. When she told him about her life in Uzushiogakure Naruto was happy to know that her mom was happy but when she told him about the tragedy that fall on Uzushio and how it happened a fire of rage burned in his eyes and it didn't go unnoticed by Kushina. She patted his head lovingly smiling and he calmed down. Then she continued how she came to Konoha and how she met Minato his dad. Naruto interrupted asking about his father and Kushina asked him to let her finish. She then told him about the time when he was in her womb and then what happened when he was born. Naruto was stunned hearing about what happened when he was born. First, Naruto felt rage at his father for sealing the Kyuubi in him and putting the village before the family. Then he felt unbridled rage on the village for what they did with his mother, and he started to shake and sweat from the fury. His blood in his veins started to boil and fists clenched. And when Kushina felt the temperature rise and his eyes started to get a shade of darker blue, Kushina had to hug him and kiss him to calm him down. It took about 15 minutes for Naruto to calm down. When Naruto calmed down, Kushina asked if he was alright and he nodded. Kushina pulled him in her lap. Then Kushina continued her story about what happened after that, and when she finished, she noticed Naruto was clutching her tighter, and when she looked at his face she became alarmed because he was crying. Naruto, what happened? Why are you crying, baby? Kushina asked, wiping his tears and kissing his forehead. He hugged her neck tightly. I am sorry, he said between sobs, and Kushina's eyes widened hearing him. Honey, why are you sorry? Kushina asked, herself on the verge of crying. If I hadn't been born, why, you still would have been he was cut off by Kushina hushing him. Don't cry, baby. You know it hurts me when you cry, don't you? Kushina said, and she felt him nod over her shoulder. After a minute, Kushina broke the hug, and wiping his face from her sleeves she kissed her forehead and cheeks and smiled and grasped both of his tiny hand in hers and looked at him. Naruto, honey, first get it out of your head that whatever happened was your fault. It wasn't your fault at all. Your coming in this world was natural and fruit of the love I did to your father. It was your father who messed up everything. He wanted a Jinchuriki for the village, so he sealed the Kyuubi in you instead of killing it. He could have killed the Kyuubi at that time when he summoned the Shinigami. But no, he wanted the strongest Biju in Konoha, even though Konoha was strong enough to fight against the villages which have Jinchurikis. But still he did that. So it's not your fault. You don't know how happy I was when I first held you in my arms. I felt like I was flying. Being your mother was the greatest thing that happened to me. So nothing was your fault. Kushina finished, and Naruto kept looking at her. Though he was only 4 years old, but he understood everything his mother told him. And he was more than happy to know that his mother was happy when she gave birth to him. Finally he nodded and smiled. Kushina ruffled his hair, kissed his head again. She gave him a glass of water and continued to tell other villages' history, whatever she knew about them. Then she started to tell him about the clans in Konoha. She told him that there are several clans in Konoha, but only few run the show, and they are Uchiha, Hyuga, Inuzuka, Nara and Yamanaka. She asked him if it was getting over or he was getting bored or tired, but he said that he was interested to know about them, and Kushina continued. She then told him about these clans and their history, whatever little she knew. She then concluded the day's training about telling him a little about chakra. So now you know about everything. How do you feel? Kushina asked, and Naruto looked at her. I feel like I have been living in these villages for a long time now. I mean, I know almost everything necessary about every village, and I feel confident now, he said, and Kushina smiled. Okay. You know, for listening to the boring history and being such a sweet boy, you deserve a reward, Kushina said, and Naruto perked up. The reward? I will give you whatever you want, Kushina said, grinning, and Naruto, eyes widened. Really? You will give me anything? He asked, and she nodded, and he started to think. And after thinking for 1 minute, he concluded that he didn't need anything. Damn, he thought that he won't let this chance go away. Then one thing came to him. His training was going good. He was satisfied with it, but one thing he needed in it. After his daily running and push-ups, when he felt thirsty, he always wanted to drink that sweet, tasty and full of nutrients milk of his mother, and she would always refuse. She had limited the breastfeeding for 2 times a day only, in afternoon and before sleeping. I have one thing I want, he said, and looked up at his mother from her lap, who was waiting to know. Tell me, she asked. You will let me drink your milk after my running and as long as I want, Naruto said, and Kushina sighed and then chuckled. I should have known, but anyway. Okay. I will let you, Kushina said smiling, and Naruto jumped from her lap in joy. Now let's get ready for your birthday evening. Your big sis Anko would come with your cake, Kushina said, and Naruto's eyes shined with happiness. He loved Anko and the time spent with her. Anko was now going on missions, so she didn't come often now, but she said there's no way she would miss her little brother's birthday. Anko always told Naruto about her missions and some new things. And Naruto asked her things he felt embarrassed to ask his mother, though he knew she would answer him if he asks her, but it was easy to ask his big sister and get acquainted with. It was afternoon and they were both sweating. Naruto still had problem in dressing and undressing properly, so Kushina undressed Naruto and herself in the living room and moved to the hot spring. Kushina entered first and sat down in the hot water to her shoulders. She looked at Naruto, who had a cute little smirk on his lips. Kushina raised an eyebrow. What are you waiting for? Kushina asked, but Naruto didn't reply. He made a little distance between himself and hot spring and ran towards it and jumped in the water, splashing it everywhere and soaking Kushina's hair and face completely. When the splashes calmed down, he looked at his mother and his smile disappeared when he saw the serious look on her face. He immediately sat down next to her and hung his head down. Some seconds later he heard a weird sound coming from his mother and he looked up towards her and his eyes widened when he saw that his mother was trying to muffle her laughter with her hands. And when she saw that Naruto was looking at her, removing her hand from her mouth, she started to laugh loudly. Ha 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 ha. You, ha ha ha. You should, ha ha ha, have seen ha, your face, Kushina said between the laughter. Naruto never saw her mother laugh so hard and openly. He felt something warm in his chest. He felt like he achieved something great. Seeing his mother laugh like that, the scene filled his whole body with happiness, but a smirk appeared on his face. It's time for a payback. He lounged at his mother and grabbed her sides and started tickling her body. Kushina started to laugh harder and tried to stop Naruto, but all her attempts were failed when Naruto started to tickling her ribs under her breasts. Ha 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 ha. Street. Ha ha ha. Santo. Naru. Ha 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 ha. Naru. Ha ha ha. Please. Ha ha ha. Ha ha. I am. Ha ha. Sorry. Ha 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 ha. Kushina couldn't even form coherent words. Tears started to flow from her eyes. She even started to drool from keeping her mouth open for a long time. Her eyes were shut tightly. When Naruto was satisfied, he stopped, and just as he stopped, Kushina's body lost all strength. She was completely exhausted. Her body lay motionless in the hot spring. Her head and arms were lying on the edge, no strength in them. She was taking long gulp of breath. Her breasts were heaving up and down with every breath. Naruto. Oh, you exhausted me, she said between pants. It was my payback, Naruto said, grinning. Don't worry, I will pay you back too, Kushina said, wiping her face off of any drool or tears. When she got her strength back, she decided it was time to get out. Well, let's get out. I also have to prepare dinner, she said, and got out. Mom, what about the cake? You said we will cut the cake, Naruto asked, hoping his mother would bring a cake to him. He had tasted it once when Anko had come with a cake on a short visit. Don't worry, Anko will bring you a cake, Kushina said and started to walk in the living room, Naruto following close behind her. Hey mom, what would you give me on my birthday? He asked. Whatever you want, Kushina said while wearing her dress. Really? Naruto asked, and Kushina stopped wearing her bra and looked at Naruto and smirked. Except my milk, you can ask for anything, she said, and Naruto whined, and Kushina laughed heartily. In evening, Anko came with the cake, and for that Naruto gave her an extra long kiss and hug, and after arranging everything they celebrated his 4th birthday. After having dinner with Uzumaki's, Anko returned to the village and both Naruto and Kushina continued their late-night celebration. From next day again, his training started. Kushina worked on Naruto's sword handling. He did some of Kushina's given heavy physical exercise until afternoon, and after that Kushina would teach him basic kenjutsu rest of the time. Then they would go and jump in the hot spring together. After bathing, Kushina would give him a book to read on chakra concepts. He would sit in her lap and would ask her if he didn't understand something, and Kushina would explain it to him as best as she could. Kushina also encouraged him in drawing field because she had planned to start his fuinjutsu training after he completes his 5 years of age. Kushina also started to give him math and other subjects books to read, and she also taught him whenever she could. Overall, this whole year was packed for little Uzumaki. So with determination and complete concentration, and with his mother, Naruto completed his 5th year. After the training, Naruto and Kushina both were resting under the tree. Naruto sat in her lap and Kushina's hand in his hairs. Naruto, tomorrow you will be 5 years old, and I am very happy to know that you have completed basic phase of your training, and I am very proud of you, Kushina said, kissing his hairs. Now I will start your chakra training and we will move to the next phase of your training. Kushina briefed him about what was about to come. We will take rest for 1 week and tomorrow we will go to Konoha and spend our week there, Kushina said, and Naruto whined, I don't want to go in that village. Kushina smiled, I know, but you know what, we are going to leave for Uzushio after that week. So for this week I want you to meet some people there, and I want you to be familiar with the village because I don't want to come here again, but I have this feeling that we will have to return, Kushina said with a thoughtful look on her face. Naruto sighed. Okay mom, as you wish, Naruto accepted and Kushina smiled. Okay, let's go and take a bath and then you can rest and I will teach you math and some biology, Kushina said, and then they both went inside to their bath. After bathing and dressing, which was just for the sake of wearing something, they came out. Kushina wore just a white loose shirt and her panties, and Naruto wore only his boxers. He was more than 3 feet tall at 5 and his body had already started to become solid. They went under the sheets and Naruto lay on his mother's breasts, the favorite place of his. Kushina started to rub his back and hair, making him purr. So is there anything you would want to ask me in math or any problem in the book of math I gave you? Kushina asked softly, and Naruto looked at her, shaking his head in a no. Kushina smiled. Good boy, she said, and again asked, and biology? She asked, and Naruto nodded in a yes. What? She asked. I read about how breasts make milk in them, he said innocently, and with a giggle Kushina nodded. So what's the problem? She asked, and Naruto sat up beside her, and when she saw the sad look on his face she too sat up. He looked serious. Mom, will your breast stop giving me milk? He asked with wet eyes and puppy dog face. Kushina couldn't help when he looked so cute. She lifted him and smothered him to her breasts, then started to caress his back softly. Naruto, let me explain to you, Kushina said, breaking the hug, and looked at his face. A woman's breast starts to generate milk when they get pregnant with a child, and when that child comes in the world, he or she feeds on this milk. Breasts continue to generate milk till the child needs it or he drinks it, around 3 years or 4 years or maybe more, and when the child starts to eat other things, at that time normally breast stops to produce milk, Kushina said in easiest way so that Naruto could understand. She felt actually sad and wished she would never stop milking when she saw the horror-stricken face of Naruto with tears flowing down to his face. Naruto continued to cry for a while, then he wiped his eyes with his sleeves and stared at his mother's breasts as if he was threatening them, and then with a growl pounced on her, pushing her on her back. Naruto, what are you doing? Kushina yelped, confused. Naruto grabbed her shirt and tried to rip it. Naruto, what are you doing? She asked again with a little annoyance this time. Naruto stopped for a second and looked at his mother. No, they can't stop making milk. They will have to continue making it. It's my favorite food, he said, growling cutely. Kushina sighed when he succeeded in tearing her shirt and freeing her breasts. Kushina thought to tell him how to behave with a girl. Naruto grabbed her left breast and started to on it harshly. He wasn't a baby anymore. He ed continuously her left breast, squeezing it with both of her hands. His small hands were all over on her left breast's soft flesh, making it pink. Ah! Escaped from Kushina's mouth, and she immediately put her hands on her mouth. Oh god, she thought inwardly with horror. Naruto, easy baby, she said, hoping for him to calm down, but Naruto didn't listen. After 5 more minutes of vigorous ing, he switched to her right breast, leaving a red breast. He started to fervently on it too, and Kushina bit her tongue to avoid any ing. She wanted to push him away as much as she wanted to pull him to her breasts. Naruto didn't do anything, he just ed on her and kept squeezing her breast to squirt milk in his mouth. After 10 minutes he stopped and popped her out of his mouth, which was red obviously. Kushina was breathing hard, and Naruto too. Naruto looked at her breasts and pointed a finger towards them. If you stopped generating milk, I would. He stopped and started to think by putting a finger to his chin. What would he do? What could he do if they stopped making milk for him? Then suddenly a bulb lightened up on his head and he smirked in triumph, which was just a cute smile for Kushina. He pointed his finger towards his mother's breasts again and said, if you stopped making milk for me, then I would make my mother pregnant, and then you will have to make milk for me again, he said, like he was ordering to her breasts as if they were some living being. Kushina's eyes widened when Naruto's words registered in her head, and hearing him made her uneasy with a little worry. How far does he intend to go for my milk? She thought in shock, and then narrowing her eyes bumped her fist on his head. OWW, it hurts. Naruto groaned in pain and looked at his mother. Stop it and go to sleep. We have to go to Konoha tomorrow, she said in a stern voice, and immediately pulled the blanket over her head and dozed off. Naruto looked at his mother, confusion all over his face. What did I do to make her mad? He started to think, and when racking his mind for several minutes he couldn't find anything, he fell back snuggling to his mother's back and slept. Next day started with as usual, like the night never happened. They brushed their teeth, took bath. Kushina helped him wear his cloths and also dressed herself in the cloths she used to wear, a white shirt and a pant and a green apron which covered her whole front. They took their breakfast like usual with Kushina's milk for Naruto. Kushina then packed all their necessary things in a single bag, making it heavy, and gave it to Naruto. As Naruto took the large bag of 5 by 5 feet, he immediately fell down and groaned in pain. Moom, he whined. Kushina turned towards him with a hidden smirk. What? She asked, feigning like she didn't see that Naruto was under the bag. This bag is heavy. I can't carry it. A sickly sweet smile appeared on Kushina's face. She walked to him and kneeled down, and placing her index finger under his chin lifted his face. You will have to carry this bag. It doesn't matter if you can carry it or not, Kushina said, smiling as Naruto's eyes went wide. But, Kushina cut him off. No buts, this is your punishment for your rude behavior with my breasts last night, she said in a little louder and edgy voice, and stood up and walked towards the door and stopped at the door and turned back. Hurry up, and if you don't, then I will leave you here alone. You will have to live alone for a week, doing all the house chore by yourself to survive. She finished and again started to walk, but again she stopped after 5 steps and looked over her shoulder. And most important thing is, there would be no milk for a week, she said nonchalantly from outside, since she knew it would get him moving. She turned and walked towards the main door of shrine, leaving a horrified Naruto behind. Naruto's mind stopped working. 1 week without his holy liquid, he would die. He gritted his teeth and with a roar got to work. Kushina was frantically moving towards the main door, since she had sensed the chakra of someone she wanted to see in the person who made her Anko's life hell. But he was unable to enter beyond the security seals, so Kushina decided to go out before Naruto comes out. She reached the main gate and walked out without a second thought. She stood there facing straight ahead and her back facing the gate of shrine. Kushina narrowed her eyes and rested her right hand palm on the handle of her sword, placed on her right hip, and her left hand was busy to disable any genjutsu placed in front of her, and she was right. the genjutsu shattered and a figure appeared. Humph. I expected better from you, Orochimaru, but this pathetic genjutsu. Are you taking me too lightly? Kushina said with disdain in her voice. Orochimaru grinned his wide trademark grin. Kukuku, of course not, Kushina. How can I underestimate you after seeing your prowess all those years ago? I was just. He got cut off by Kushina. Why are you here? She asked coldly, making his grin disappear. Orochimaru smirked. Well, I just wanted to see. Kushina again cut him off mid-sentence. Didn't you hear me? Why are you here? She asked again and released a little killing intent. That got him and he became serious. Well, behind you is an Uzumaki shrine, and my guess is you know that there is something I desire to obtain, Orochimaru said with as serious as he could. A predatory glint flashed in Kushina's eyes and a cut mark appeared on Orochimaru's cheek, making his eyes go wide. What the? She didn't even twitch, and the thought flashed in his head. Kushina, calm down. You want the mask, she said blatantly. Orochimaru came out of his musings and shrugged. Kushina was right, he wanted the mask, and Kushina's direct approach made him a little uneasy. He thought Kushina would be wary of talking about the mask. A smirk formed on Kushina's face which made Orochimaru more unsettling. He raised his eyebrow in confusion. You seem elated, he spit in contempt. Well, sorry to say, but I am the owner of the mask now, so you can go now, she said coldly, crushing his desire to get his hands on the mask. Orochimaru stared at Kushina rather nervously than with any hints of anger, since he knew what she could do. But he will wait for his chance. A smile formed on his face. Well, it's my loss then, but a piece of information for you, he said as he smirked, and it widened by the curious gaze of Kushina. What information? She asked confidently, though she knew he would know she was curious. Orochimaru clapped his hands and his smirk widened. The Shinigami mask is not the only mask in this world. There are other masks too, to summon other gods, he said gleefully, making Kushina's eyes go wide in disbelief. And before she could ask anything, he disappeared. There are more masks, she muttered in disbelief and shock. Mom, she heard and came out of her stupor and looked down and saw that Naruto was standing there with that large box of their things. Who were you talking to? He asked, and Kushina paused before answering. No one, just some old acquaintances, she said, nodding towards Naruto. There were other masks which she never knew, and neither her father ever told her. Were those masks given to the summoner without any knowledge to others, or they were some kind of hidden relics? I will have to find out about this, but for now. She thought and looked at Naruto. Let's go, she said, and they started to walk. I hope to get a reward for carrying this mountain, he said, looking straight ahead. Kushina looked at him. This is your training, understood, she said sternly, and no reward for this, she finished. Naruto stopped for a second but then resumed his walking. Kushina sighed, seeing the defeated look on his face, and she knew better that it was just to trap her to give certain award. But she couldn't see that foreign look on his face. She was still getting used to his looks. I will think about it, she said, and immediately his shoulders moved back, pushing his chest outward, and a new excitement in his walk. Kushina sighed again, seeing the effect. After 3 hours they reached the Konoha gates. They entered and walked straight. The guards on the gate didn't even dare to stop her, but they wondered who the kid was. Kushina walked in the market and she smiled when she watched Minato eyeing every stall, shops and items in them with stars in his eyes. The happiness and excitement was oozing from him. Naruto, let's find a place to stay for the week and then we could wander as much as you want, Kushina said, and Naruto nodded furiously. It was all new for him and he was more than extremely excited to explore everything. After 5 minutes they checked in a luxurious inn for a week. They took their keys and walked to their room. Naruto put the bag down and fell face first on the bed, dead tired and exhausted. His body was aching all over. Now he understood how hard his mother going to train him. Kushina checked the whole room for any hidden danger, and after placing some security seals she came to Naruto and smiled seeing his sleeping form. She lay down beside him and kissed his head, and wrapping her arms around his body pulled him closer to her warm body. Naruto snuggled closer to her bosom, and with a smile Kushina too dozed off. Shikaku was busy in the paperwork. He cursed Kushina for killing old man, and now he was the one doing the job. He didn't even have time to sleep. One of the guard then barged in the Hokage office. "Hokage-sama," he shouted, and Shikaku closed his eyes in frustration. "Shut up and tell me what happened," he said in annoyance. He calmed his breath. "Kushina-san is here in the village with a red-haired kid," he informed. Shikaku raised an eyebrow. "Okay, where did she go, you know?" he asked, and the guard shook his head in a no. Shikaku sighed. "Okay, I don't want anyone chasing her and have any more casualty." "Understood," he ordered, and guard nodded. "You can go now," Shikaku said, and he shunshined. Shikaku leaned back against the chair's backrest and smiled. "She is here with her kid Naruto," he thought, and again got busy in his paperwork. In the afternoon Kushina woke up and looked around suspiciously, and when she was sure everything was alright she woke Naruto, but he pulled the blanket over his head and mumbled, "5 more minutes." "Naruto, no 5 minutes, wake up now," she said strictly, but got no response, and a tick mark appeared on her head. Then she sighed. She went in the bathroom and filled the tub with hot water, and returning in the room undressed Naruto completely and lifted him and took him in the bathroom and placed his sleeping body in the tub. She too removed her cloths and sat beside him, wrapping an arm around his shoulder to keep him steady. She cleaned herself and Naruto and lifting him brought him back to bedroom. She laid him down and wiped his body clean, then dressed his sleeping body. "Boy, how deep you are sleeping," she muttered with a smile. She loved doing all this to Naruto, taking care of him in every way. She knew once he is older, there won't be chances like that. She wiped her own body and get dressed and again tried to wake him up, but again he didn't wake up. Kushina sighed. Now she was sure that he was feigning sleep. Kushina sat down on the bed beside him. "Well, I wanted to give you a reward for carrying that big bag all the way here, but it seems your sleep is more important than what I had planned to give you," Kushina said with disappointment and sighed loudly. Smirking inside when the look on Naruto's face changed from peaceful to restless. "Anyway, I am going out, you rest," she said and stood up, but as she turned to move she found her wrist being held up by Naruto. She turned back and raised an eyebrow. Naruto blushed in embarrassment and turned his eyes away. I am sorry," he said in a meek voice. Kushina closed her eyes and smiled. "Okay. You are forgiven," she said, and they both were ready to go out. They came out of the inn and turned left and started to walk. Naruto looked up at his mother. "Where are we going, mommy?" he asked, and Kushina patted his head. "There's a ramen shop nearby which makes the best ramen in the world," Kushina replied. "Ramen is your favorite?" Naruto asked, and Kushina nodded. "You also like ramen, don't you?" she asked, and Naruto shrugged. "I like ramen, but nothing compares to your milk," he said nonchalantly, making Kushina blush a little on his comment in the middle of the crowd. 5 minutes later they reached the Ichiraku's ramen shop, and Naruto giggled cutely when he saw his mother drooling while dreaming about ramen. "Mom," he called her out of her daydream. "Huh? Oh." She rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. They reached the countertop and Kushina called, "Hey old man Tuki." She got his attention and he looked at the owner of the voice and smiled. "Well, you couldn't stay away from my ramen, huh?" he said with a smile. "You know me, old man," Kushina said and seated herself in Naruto. "And who could this cutie be?" Ayame asked, looking at Naruto. "No, let me guess." "Naruto," she said, and leaning over the countertop pinched his cheek and ruffled his hair, making him blush in embarrassment. "Ah, isn't he a little ball of cuteness?" Ayame chirped, and Naruto hmphed. Kushina wrapped her arms around Naruto. "Naruto, Tuki is our longtime family friend and one of the few we can trust," she said in a soft voice. Naruto looked at her and she nodded. Naruto looked at the owner and his daughter and bowed. Thanks for having us, he said and again took his seat. Tsuki nodded smiling and Ayame again ruffled his hair. So Kushina, what are your plans now? You just disappeared after. Tsuki asked and Kushina sighed. Well, you know the deal, old man. I just wanted to stay away after what happened, she said and her face fell. She smiled when Naruto held her hand in both of his. I can understand, Tsuki said and served them both their hot steaming bowls of ramen. Naruto started to eat and immediately he looked at his mother who had her eyes closed, savoring the taste. Then opening her eyes she looked at Naruto who had already finished his bowl and ready for seconds. Kushina chuckled. Well, isn't it the god's food? She asked with a smirk. Naruto closed his eyes. You are right. It has the amazing taste, he said and he knew what his mother was insinuating so he added, but it's still on second place. It can't compete with your oomph. Kushina immediately covered his babbling mouth with her hand and laughed nervously towards the staring duo. They were finished after 15-7 bowls and were on their way to their next destination. Hey mom, where are we going now? Naruto asked. How would you like to rest? Kushina said and Naruto whined, I am not tired anymore. Kushina smirked. You will be, she said and when Naruto looked confused she pointed towards the Hokage monuments. There, you will have to reach there while following me, she said and started to run at a pace at which Naruto will have to use every ounce of his strength to keep up with her. 20 seconds later Kushina stopped on the Hokage monuments and behind her a sweating and panting Naruto bumped in her butt hardly and fell down and passed out. Kushina smiled and sat on the edge with Naruto on her lap, sleeping. She looked at the village. It was amazing scenery from that far away but only she knew what was in there. After some time she lay back on the ground and fell asleep. They woke up at dusk and decided to head to the inn. Hey mom, when will we go to Anko-chan's house? Naruto asked as he rubbed his mother's back in the shower. They have decided to take a shower before going to bed. Tomorrow I guess, she said. Anko was on a mission and she returned in the morning. She slept till afternoon then decided to take a shower. She was laying in the tub when the doorbell rang and when she sensed the chakra. She forgot she was in the tub but and ran to the gate and flung it open and immediately lunged at the red-headed mother in a fierce hug. Kushina was a little surprised at Anko's state but she guessed the situation and ushered Anko inside. Anko, go and finish your shower, Kushina said sternly, leaving no space for argument. Anko nodded nervously and went to finish the shower. 10 minutes later they were sitting in her living room sipping on their teas. Anko looked at Kushina. You know I am ecstatic that you are here but what's the occasion? Anko asked giddily and Kushina could see the happiness on her face. She raised her eyebrows. Nothing, I just wanted Naruto to visit the village, Kushina said ruffling Naruto's hair and looked at Anko. I also thought that it will be a good idea to see everyone before we leave for our journey, she said and the smile on Anko's face lessened. Leave, blurted Anko looking at Kushina then a second later looked to the side. Kushina stood up and sat beside Anko and put an arm around her shoulder and with other hand she moved Anko's face towards her and Kushina's heart went out for her when she saw the look of utter sadness and tears in her eyes. Kushina never saw this look on Anko's face even when she had the curse seal. Kushina hugged Anko to her chest and held her trembling and quivering body in her arms. After around 20 minutes they separated and Kushina handed Anko some tissues. You alright? Kushina asked and Anko nodded. They sat in silence and then Kushina spoke. Anko, I can understand your feelings but you know, leaving this village means leaving your everything behind, abandoning everything you hold dear here, your friends, your career, your life and even your identity as a shinobi, Kushina said in a soft tone and wrapping an arm around Anko's shoulders she squeezed them. I don't have anyone in this village whom I hold to my heart except you and my life here had already finished but I am sure there are several people you love in this village. Like Yugao and Hana and I know you are emotional right now but leaving your identity and career behind is not a decision you take on the spur of moment, Kushina released her shoulders and cupped Anko's cheek in her right hand and smiled warmly. You have 5 days to think before I leave and more than enough time to take a right decision. You go and talk to your friends and spend time with them. You can take Naruto with you if you want. Kushina finished with a warm smile and a kiss to Anko's forehead which made Anko close her eyes and tears squeezed out from her eyes down to her cheeks. After a minute Anko exhaled deeply and opened her eyes only to meet 2 shining violet orbs, full of warmth and love. Anko exhaled, smiled and nodded. Okay, so what's the plan? Anko asked in her usual jovial tone. Kushina smiled back at her even though she could see the confliction in her eyes. Okay. You go and take Naruto out and, she paused uncertainty, do whatever you want. She shrugged, but be careful, this village is still not safe for Naruto. Kushina warned and stood up and again sat beside Naruto who was busy in munching on dango sticks. I have some business with Hokage and I might be busy for quite a while every day, she told Anko and turned to Naruto. Naruto, I want to say something to you, Kushina said and Naruto nodded. Kushina turned to Anko and asked her to get ready. Anko went inside to get dressed properly. Kushina cupped Naruto's cheeks and kissed his nose. Naruto, mommy will be busy for some time every day, okay, and you will go out with Anko, Kushina said and Naruto nodded but Kushina kept looking in his eyes making him uncomfortable. What? He nervously said. Naruto, if you ever mentioned about my milker you still feed on my breasts, to anyone even to Anko, I will never in your whole life let you come closer to my breasts, Kushina said in a strict and serious tone which indicated that he will get punished severely if he revealed this to anyone. Naruto gulped the lump of saliva in his throat and nodded fearfully. She nodded in affirmation and turned towards Anko entering in the living room, dressed in her shinobi cloths. Naruto was still looking at Kushina, scary, he even stuttered in his thought. Kushina stood up. Okay, you guys have fun, I am going, and said and turned to Anko, and if any problem arises, call me immediately, Kushina said pointing to Anko's wrist which had a calm seal on it. Anko nodded and Kushina shunshined. Okay Naruto, let's go, Anko exclaimed cheerfully and lifting Naruto on her shoulder ran out of her apartment. Kushina made her way towards Hokage Tower. She was going on foot through streets and she could feel everyone's eyes on her but it was no concern to her. She continued on her way and after 10 minutes was standing in front of the Hokage building. She entered inside and in a matter of seconds was standing in front of Hokage, Shikaku Nara. Kushina bowed. Greetings, Hokage-sama, she said respectfully and stood straight. Kushina-san, please have a seat, he offered and nodded. They sat in silence for some moments then Kushina spoke. So how is your search going on in efforts to find me? Kushina remarked with a smirk and slitted eyes. Shikaku stared at Kushina for some moments then closing his eyes exhaled, I have stopped all the searching for you. No one is going to say anything to you now, he said in a Hokage tone. Kushina closed her eyes and sighed, alright, why did you call me? She asked professionally. Shikaku nodded. Yeah, I wanted a favor from you or you can say I want your help, Shukaku said in a requesting tone. Kushina stared at him intently. What favor? She asked warily. Shikaku stood up and walked to the window and looked at the collapsed village. After the Kyuubi attack, the village is weak. More than half of our force is still busy in rebuilding the village, he said with a hint of sadness in his voice and turned back to his chair and sat down. All our security seals are damaged and we can't jeopardize village's safety any more than it's already is, Shikaku said with a racing heart. He was afraid if Kushina refused his request then repairing or replacing of security seals to their older power would be almost impossible and Kushina was the only one who could handle this. Jiraiya was out of question since he had already a job assigned to him. He looked at Kushina. There's a chance that other villages might attack and if that happens then, he stopped and left it hanging. Kushina was silent all the time without interrupting. Her eyes landed on his and stared in them and then sighed. Well, I am not a citizen of Konoha anymore and I don't have any obligations towards Konoha, so she left it hanging for Shikaku to finish it. What do you want in return? He asked, hoping it wouldn't be out of his grasp. What can you give me? She shot back with a blank expression. He leaned back in his chair. Well, you are about to leave for whatever destination you have in mind, so I think money is what you would need, he said, hoping that could be the only thing she needed. Money is something that I obviously would need, but no matter the amount, money could never be worth of an Uzumaki sealing work, she stated and folded her arms under her breasts. Then what else do you want? He asked almost impatiently. Kushina stood up and walked to the glass window and stared outside. First of all, I want as much money as you can arrange without giving any problem to others, and then, she turned and sat back in her seat and looked at Shikaku. I want the copies of Forbidden Scrolls that first Hokage and second Hokage wrote, she put her demand in front of Shikaku politely. Shikaku was taken aback by Kushina's demands for the safety of the village. He gawked at Kushina wide-eyed. Kushina continued, in return I will make a unique security seal, kind of never made ever before, she stated, and Shikaku's looks told her to explain. This seal will completely be in Hokage's control. Not even I after making it could enter inside it without your permission. There will be a small sealing system in this room for you to check and keep an eye on who is entering in the village and who is going out. There will be a panel in which you will feed some of your chakra and the whole security system will come alive. It will also show you the chakra amount one possess while entering in the village. And if someone with large amount of chakra enters in the village, it will alert you immediately. The most important and noticeable feature is, she stopped and sighed, it seems I need to increase my demands according to the features this seal is going to have, Kushina said without looking at Shikaku. Shikaku was flabbergasted by the features Kushina had just counted to him, and the most commendable feature was that he could himself keep an eyes on the security. But the scrolls written by first Hokage and second Hokage possessed secrets that were never heard before. The secrets they never revealed. Only Mito Uzumaki knew what was in them. Maybe she might have told Kushina. Shikaku looked at Kushina with calculating eyes to find something suspicious in them, but after 1 minute of a staring contest, he sighed defeated. Currently the security of the village was the first priority. He did not have any other choice. Okay. I agree with your demands for the security seals you have just told me, he said, ready to seal the deal, but Kushina stopped him by raising her palm. Let me revise my demands, Hokage-sama, because the work I am going to do for you is something that even first, second and fourth Hokage, together could not have done, maybe, but not without help of Mito Uzumaki, she said with a professional tone, and Shikaku nodded reluctantly. First is money, as much as you can arrange without causing any trouble for yourself. I think you can arrange at least 2 medium-sized bags full of the money. Second is the Forbidden Scrolls copy. I will copy them myself. Third is a free pass for me and my son to travel all the elemental nations just like Sanin's. How you will arrange them, it's your problem. So that's all, I guess. Kushina finished, and Shikaku's body had been slumped in his chair like it lost all its strength. So much for being a friend, he mumbled in a weak tone. Kushina just gave him a smile. You are free to call me anytime you are in trouble, and if I am free or near the village I will come to your aid, Kushina said, and a smile crossed Shikaku's lips. Thanks. But this offer is exclusively for you, not for your shinobis or village, and if you want to call me then I think you will need Anko near you, Kushina said. After that they sealed the deal by shaking hands. Then Kushina left, saying that she would complete the work in 5 days and expects to him to meet the end of the deal. It's been 2 hours, man, it took longer than I intended, she thought, and made her way to where her baby was. Where are we going, big sis? Naruto asked from where he was sitting, and that place was Anko's shoulder. Would you like to eat something first? She asked with a soft smile, and Naruto nodded. Anko took Naruto to her favorite bar restaurant. It was divided in two parts, one was bar for drinkers and other was a simple restaurant. Anko sat down in one of the chair and put Naruto on her lap. Anko then ordered one plate of everything and several of Dango's. In a few minutes everything was finished except Dango plates. This is good, Naruto said in amazement. Anko's eyes shined up on Naruto's praise for her favorite food. Really? She asked. Yup, he said, munching on a Dango stick. What is your favorite food? Anko asked suddenly. Mom's Naruto spoke up instantly, but next instant he remembered his mother's warning. Naruto looked at Anko with big blue puppy eyes. I mean mom's ramen. He evaded, but his answer went over Anko's head because her eyes had hearts in them. She squealed, so cute, and grabbing Naruto pulled him close to her body in a bear hug, mashing his face in her breasts and then started kissing all over his face. Naruto was afraid she would eat his head. Suddenly Anko felt eyes on them and she immediately became aware of her surroundings and a blush crept on her beautiful face. Everyone was gawking at her actions towards Naruto. Anko has her own a delinquent-like reputation in bars like that, and no one ever saw her being affectionate to anyone, not even other kids like Kiba, Sasuke, Shikamaru, Ino, Sakura, Hinata and some more whenever they visited with their mothers in that food part of the restaurant. It was a scene to make a video of. Those expressions on Anko's face were never seen by anyone except Kushina. She stood up and turned towards the crowd. What the air you are looking at? Your mother's not here, she roared, and everyone immediately got busy in their earlier tasks. Anko then sat back in her seat after making sure that none of her fine words were heard by Naruto. They munched on their Dango plates for only 1 minute when their heads snapped up when they heard several women squealing. Naruto looked confused and Anko looked at the group of ladies annoyingly. What the hell are they doing here? Anko thought while looking towards the group of women which was coming towards them. Who are they, big sis? Naruto asked cutely, which only made the women squeal more loudly. Anko sighed. They are your mother's old friends, she told him and glared towards them. The group came near them. Come on, Anko-chan, don't look at us like that. It's our first time we have seen Kushina's baby, Makoto Uchiha said in a soft tone, which was agreed by other women that included Sume, Yoshino, Mebuki and other Konoha clan mothers with their babies holding their hands. Makoto was the first who gave Naruto a hug and a kiss, making his blush. Ah, he looks so cute when he blushes, Makoto gushed with hearts in her eyes. Anko looked at the other women and sighed annoyingly when she saw a trickle of blood coming out from their nose. And then they broke loose and surrounded Naruto, pushing Anko aside. Her angry yells were lost in their laughter and squeals. Anko pushed, but someone's hips struck her hard and she lost her balance and struck her head in the wall, falling unconscious. Naruto was having a hard time. Every woman around him had their hands on his 5-year-old body, feeling it up, and their lips on all over his face, leaving the lipstick mark all over his face. Some of them were surprised to feel that his body was hard and muscled than their own son's. After half an hour later, Anko and Naruto were walking towards Hokage Monument, but they decided to visit all the places before that last destination. Anko somehow was able to save Naruto from those ladies. Naruto exhaled loudly. Phew, those women were scary, he deduced, and Anko chuckled. So didn't you want to play with the other kids? She asked and glanced at Naruto. Not really, he answered. They reached to their destination after 1 hour, and after looking for a grassy place they decided to stay there until Kushina comes. They both lay there facing the sky with smiles on their faces. Anko turned her head towards Naruto. Hey, will you miss me? Anko asked in a low tone. Naruto looked at her. Of course, how can I forget my one and only big sis? Naruto said with a wide grin, making Anko smile with wet eyes. Thank you, Naruto, she said and put a soft affectionate kiss on his lips. Naruto blushed first but then frowned. Come on, Anko-chan, don't cry, Naruto said and wrapped his small hands around her neck. Anko chuckled and pulled him tighter to her. I won't cry if you promise to contact me daily, she said, and he promised immediately. Suddenly Anko felt an icy aura, but she was too late to move, and a black metal rod pierced her arm into the ground. She cried in pain and tried to pull out the rod, but a feminine hand stopped her and kicked her face. Naruto was looking around frantically to see where the attacker was. Suddenly his mind throbbed in pain, then his body started to thrash in agony. Naruto! Anko cried but couldn't move because of the rod. She again tried to pull the rod out, but an electric current stopped her. Damn it! Where the hell are you? Anko cried out loudly. Nine-tailed Jinchuriki, your time has come, a feminine voice said, and a woman with blue hair appeared in front of Naruto, whose body was writhing in pain on the ground. Who the hell are you? Anko growled in anger, trying to pull the rod out. The blue-haired woman looked at Anko casually. It doesn't concern you. Nothing concerns you, woman said nonchalantly. Anko's face contorted in different shapes due to anger. You bitch, you come here like a walk in the garden and threaten us and then say this doesn't concern me. You are sorely mistaken, Anko growled from gritting teeth and tried to maneuver her body on her knees. When she was on her knees with one arm impaled to the ground, she looked at the woman. Let me make something clear. She stood up, but her arm was still impaled. Naruto is my one and only brother. She exhaled air, she roared and pulled her arm up along the rod's length. The woman's eyes widened, but without wasting time she moved to Naruto's side and put her hand over his stomach, and immediately orange chakra started to seep out of Naruto's body. Anko's eyes widened in horror seeing the Kyuubi's chakra coming out of Naruto's body. No, 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 no. This can't be happening. Naruto, no. Anko cried desperately. Her body was almost numb. It seemed that rod absorbed a fair amount of her chakra. Anko gathered her strength and lunged at the woman. You whore, I will kill you. Anko pulled a punch on the woman, but she cried out in pain when another rod pierced her calf. Anko slowly turned her head and was surprised to see the same woman was standing there. Anko fell down on the ground. Conan is my name, the woman said, and hundreds of paper appeared above Anko and formed a shape of spear, ready to impale Anko. Conan lifted her hand. Goodbye, whoever you are, and brought her hand down with the spear. Shit, Anko said inwardly with wide eyes. Just as the spear was some inches away from her stomach, it shattered in tiny pieces. Conan's eyes widened, and then her vision was obscured by red, and a punch to the jaw sent Conan spiraling on the ground. Don't you dare to touch my son, Kushina growled like an animal, and a red-hot aura started to cover her body. Her eyes went blank. Anko understood what was about to happen, but, Kushina-san, you need to save Naruto first, she yelled, and Kushina's eyes turned to Naruto and the aura disappeared and her eyes became normal. She rushed to Naruto and observed. The orange chakra had completely shrouded Naruto. The cries of agony and extreme pain from Naruto almost made her cry. Kushina immediately made some hand signs and put her hand on Naruto's stomach, and gradually the orange chakra receded back into his body. Kushina stood up and walked to the downed Conan, but just as she reached closer, Conan's body exploded in papers. Kushina came rushing back to Naruto and lifted him in her arms. Naruto baby, hey, it's mommy, open your eyes Naruto, Kushina said desperately. She checked his pulse, but it was normal. Then her attention went to Anko. Anko, are you alright? Kushina asked in worry. Anko nodded. Why yeah, but Kushina could tell she was in great pain. Kushina again looked at Naruto. Naruto, honey, mama's here baby, please, open your eyes, she choked on her words. Then an Anbu team arrived at the scene with Hokage. What happened here? We detected Kyuubi's chakra, Shikaku said in an urgent tone. Everything is alright. Someone attacked these two. Good God, I reached at time, Kushina said, composing herself, and looked at Anko. A medic team arrived at the scene and Kushina asked them to take care of Anko and she would take care of Naruto herself. Kushina, are you sure? Shikaku asked and Kushina nodded. Anko, you go with them. I will see you later. Kushina said and lifted Naruto turned to Shikaku. I will start the work from tomorrow morning. It's need to be done as soon as possible, Kushina said and he nodded. Kushina then teleported in the room she had rented in the inn and laid Naruto on the bed. She removed all his cloths and cleaned his body with a wet cloth and then covered him under the blankets and sat down beside him, waiting for him to wake up with wet eyes. Then she decided that it was time to talk to Kyuubi and after what happened today it was a necessity. Kushina nodded to herself and put a hand on his forehead and closed her eyes. Some seconds later she found herself in a sewer. Kushina looked around and moved ahead. After walking through several minutes she reached her destination. There in the cage was the Kyuubi, only his two dark red shining orbs could be seen. Kushina walked closer and saw Naruto's body shrouded in red chakra just like earlier. Leave him alone Kyuubi, otherwise I will have to make you, Kushina stated in a cold and buzzing tone. The chakra around Naruto dissipated and Naruto lay there unconscious. So finally you are here, Kyuubi said in his loud demonic voice. Yeah, there are some things I want to know and my guess is only you can answer them, Kushina stated and walked towards her son. Really? And here I thought you never wanted to see me again, Kyuubi snorted followed by a mirthless chuckle. Yes, I never wanted to see your face but circumstances made it a need to talk to you, Kushina said and sat down near her son and started to stroke his hairs. Silence ensued after that for a minute then Kyuubi spoke. Your son is quite fond of your titties, Kyuubi said with a smirk making Kushina's eyebrow twitch. He is fond of my milk, Kushina hissed through gritted teeth. Not much different, Kyuubi snickered. Another twitch mark appeared on her forehead. Why you? Kushina growled. Well, why you came here? Kyuubi asked in a serious tone. First of all, why Naruto is not getting up? It's been some hours already, Kushina asked in a worried tone. Ah man, in a couple of hours he will wake up. His body has taken quite a strain, Kyuubi stated and Kushina nodded with a sigh of relief. Alright then, start from telling about me, Kushina said and Kyuubi raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? Are you talking about Naruto's fondness of your milk? He asked making Kushina's eyes twitch again. Don't make me force you Kyuubi. I am not in the joking mood, Kushina said in a threatening tone. Kyuubi sighed and turned serious. Okay then listen very carefully, Kyuubi started and Kushina nodded. That day when you were about to die, you didn't have any ounce of human chakra in your body. Any other person would have died but not you. According to my guess, all of the things that happened to you that day were caused by your will to not die. Our mind is connected to every cell and nerve of our body which in turn governs the chakra and its flow in network. When these cells didn't find any chakra to feed to your body it started to search other options because your mind was commanding them to feed the chakra and your body didn't have it. So they came in contact with the residuals of my chakra which was in a waiting mode to react with something and when your governing cells found my chakra, it worked like a catalyst to my chakra and then my chakra was fed to your body. In simple words, your chakra network was empty so before your natural chakra could start replenish my chakra spread in your chakra network, Kyuubi explained to her and Kushina listened him carefully. But one thing she didn't understand, why didn't your chakra kill me? She asked. You are a stubborn woman and your chakra is stronger since you are a pure-blooded Uzumaki. It's the simple answer and if I explain it, when my chakra was fully manifested in your chakra network it started to destroy your body but then your own chakra started to replenish and it stopped my chakra from destroying your chakra networks, Kyuubi explained in details. Okay then how I turned in that? Whatever it was, Kushina asked. She still didn't know what it was. When your chakra stopped my chakra from destroying your chakra network hence your body, there was a conflict between these two. Two swords cannot stay in one sheath. So what happened was that these two chakras were forced to adapt by your body and mind and they mixed and formed a new version of chakra. A new chakra or in other words a new species, Kyuubi finished leaving Kushina flabbergasted with wide eyes. You mean I am a new species, Kyubi finished. My chakra is orange or red, whatever you call it. Your natural chakra or human chakra color is blue, but your chakra color is now brown. Kyubi finished, rendering Kushina a mess of worry. Kushina gulped. Kyubi, does it have any side effects? She asked in a vulnerable tone which Kyubi liked. Did you notice any in these 5 years? Kyubi asked, and Kushina shook her head in a no. Then Kyubi shrugged. Silence again fell over. Then Kushina broke it. Then tell me, how can I use this new form on my will? Kushina asked. Kyubi snorted. Man, so much for being a red-hot blood habanero, he mumbled, making Kushina's eyes twitch in irritation. Woman, it's as simple as your jutsu. You use your jutsu on will, don't you? This form is just like that, a jutsu, Kyubi said in frustration. First, people didn't want to talk to him, and when they need him they came begging for answers. But you know what? Kyubi continued, this new form will evolve again. When, how many times, I don't know, he said, and fell silent. They stayed silent for a while. Okay, what about Naruto then? Kushina asked worryingly. What about Naruto? Kyubi said, feigning like he didn't understand. Kushina sighed. She needed to be patient to get the answers. What I mean is that, how you're being sealed in Naruto and this whole mess with me can affect Naruto, Kushina rephrased her question. Let's see, your limp-ed husband had skills, so he made some changes in original seal. The modified seal was designed to leak my chakra on a regular basis, in Naruto's chakra system, so he could use it for his own benefit, Kyubi answered. And how will it affect Naruto? She asked, ignoring the comment about her late husband. Well, she didn't care about that. When my chakra spread in your system there was no resistance, but the case with Naruto is different. There will be conflict, but I think his own chakra will win since only a minuscule amount of my chakra leaks in his system, Kyubi said, and looked at Kushina. Kushina sighed. So Naruto is going to end up like me, she said, and caressed Naruto's face. Well, who knows? In your case my chakra was primary or dominant, and in Naruto's case it's secondary. His own is primary or dominant. So guessing is not possible until result is in front of us, he said, and scratched the back of his ear. But you know what, Naruto is in your titties for a long time now, so it might affect him, Kyubi said casually. Kushina's eyebrow twitched on his choice of words. And how will it affect him? Kushina growled in annoyance. Kyubi didn't answer. He tried to scratch his back with his paws but failed. He looked at Kushina. Hey Kushina, can you scratch my back, it's itching, he asked, and Kushina gritted her teeth in anger. Why you foo? Okay, she said, calming down. She needed answers. Kyubi brought his back closer to the bars and Kushina scratched it. It was fluffy and soft to touch like feathers. Kyubi purred, making Kushina growl in annoyance. Have you heard that energy can't be destroyed, it can only be changed from one form to another? Kyubi asked, and Kushina nodded. Yeah, I have read it, she answered, but how is it related to Naruto? She questioned. Everything is made up of energy. What is chakra? A form of energy. What is your milk? A form of energy. That energy is being transferred to him through your milk. That's all there is to it, Kyubi finished. Kushina stopped scratching his back and returned to Naruto's side. But my body will stop producing milk after some time, then Naruto won't drink any more, so. Kushina stopped. How long has it been since Naruto was born? 5 years, you may have stopped lactating till now, but you haven't, so, who knows if your body will ever stop. It might be a feature of this new species, Kyubi said, making Kushina go thinking mode. Silence ensued. A smirk formed on Kyubi's face. Why? Don't you want him to your milk out of your large titties? Kyubi snickered. And before Kushina could say anything he started, oh, I remember now. If you stopped making milk for me, then I would make my mother pregnant, and then you will have to make milk for me again. Kyubi said the same words Naruto had said that day and broke out in a booming laughter. Kushina went red. WHWHWH, she couldn't form a word and Kyubi started laughing hard. Man, that was hilarious. Really. Seeing your son would go to such lengths to continue drinking your milk, Kyubi said while laughing his off. Kushina couldn't take it anymore and withdrew from Naruto's mindscape. That in Kyubi, I will kill him, Kushina hissed loudly to herself. It took her several minutes to calm down. She lay down beside still unconscious Naruto and pulled him close to her breasts and smiled and fell asleep. She had a content smile on her face. Her worries were casted off by Kyubi's answers. The only things she needed to know were how much powerful she could be and how much she would evolve. And how much time it will take for Kyubi's chakra to show signs of Naruto's evolution. Kyubi had said that Naruto's chakra has also started to mix with Kyubi's and it was just a matter of time when he will show signs of the effect. Or he needed some kind of situation or catalyst to forcibly bring those signs out. She was a new species now, a half human and half something else. But it wasn't the topic of her worries anymore. She was happy that she was now much stronger than before and now she would be able to save Naruto from any kind of danger. She will have to explore her new transformation in deep to know it better. Kushina, Anko and Naruto were sitting in Anko's apartment. Naruto was sleeping in Anko's lap with his arms around her and his head on her breasts. Anko had her hands in his hair massaging his scalps. She had a sad look in her semi-closed puffy eyes and some tear streaks on her face. Kushina sat on the couch beside Anko with her left arm around Anko's shoulder and her right hand caressing Naruto's back and her chin resting on Anko's head. The picture was just that of a family. The next morning was the time for their departure and the reason of the entire distressful environment in the room. Kushina had finished all her work regarding the security seals of Konoha. She had done a marvelous job on the security barrier of Konoha and all of it can be monitored by a single small seal in Hokage office. All the features were just like she had promised to Shikaku. No one will be able to enter inside the seal. It was just like the seal she had put around the Uzumaki shrine but a little weaker with the advantage of several distinguished functions regarding the visitors whereas the seal around shrine didn't have any kind of those functions. After finishing the work Shikaku gave her the 2 scrolls and Kushina copied them in 2 small scrolls in front of Shikaku. While copying the scrolls Kushina's eyes fell on something or better say some words that must stay hidden from anyone's eyes. The words were, an army of the dead. Kushina wondered what it was so she read further and her eyes widened with every word. It was a different version of Edo Tensei, a much destructive version where the dead will rise from their graves. She immediately closed it when Shikaku noticed her shocked face and asked what the problem was. Kushina copied the scrolls and decided to look into it later. She shook hand with Shikaku and bid her goodbyes with money, rights to travel all the villages and the scrolls. She obviously had gotten more than the value of seal she had placed. But she had worked hard day and night for the work to finish in a week of time. She had several clones working on different phases of the seal. She had cut almost 90% of her time with Naruto and his supply of milk for this whole time. And after 2 days Naruto was getting mad and Kushina's breasts had started to swell and hurt from the milk. Last day when she got in the room, Naruto devoured her breasts and emptied them but later they were swollen due to excess ing. Anko didn't go on any missions. She assisted Kushina in her work and also looked after Naruto. But now she was upset that Kushina was leaving. After being close to Kushina for so long Anko started to consider her a mother figure and the feeling of having a parent which Anko never had, she felt now with Kushina. She was crying when Kushina entered in her apartment. Anko tried to hide it but couldn't hide her red eyes and after some persuasion from Kushina Anko told her how she felt. Kushina was shocked when she heard that Anko considered her a mother figure. Kushina sat there in silence for a minute and then she embraced Anko and Anko melted in her arms. And just as Kushina wrapped her arms around Anko she started to cry like a child and Kushina comforted her like a mother. Anko calmed down after few minutes and Kushina released her but didn't let go and kept her arm around her shoulder. Just on the cue Naruto walked in the room. He was sleeping in Anko's bedroom while Kushina was out. He came out rubbing his eyes and looked at both the embracing ladies in the room. A smile formed on his face. He walked towards them and stood in front of them. They both had their eyes closed. Naruto folded his arms over his chest. "And where is my place?" he said, and Kushina's right arm and Anko's left arm came forward and Naruto jumped in them and immediately sat in his mother and sister's warm embrace. Some minutes later his stomach growled in hunger. He always got hungry after waking up, and after the incident at the Hokage monument Naruto was tired and hungry most of the time. Kushina stood up and went in the kitchen and Naruto now sat on Anko's lap. After eating his food they sat like a family of three, and since it was the night, they went to bed. Kushina lay in middle and Naruto and Anko laid both sides of Kushina. Next day, in early morning, Kushina, with Naruto on her back still sleeping and a clone with their luggage, were ready to leave Konoha. They stood at the gate with all Kushina's friends there to say goodbye. Kushina walked to Anko and gave her a kiss on her forehead and looked in her eyes. "I am just a call away, my daughter," Kushina said as she cupped her cheek and Anko's eyes welled up. Kushina enveloped her in her arms. They broke the hug and nodded to each other. Anko kissed Naruto's forehead and patted his sleeping face. And then Kushina was gone. Kushina appeared in the Uzumaki shrine. She woke Naruto up and decided to gather the things they would need, and with several clones it was finished in minutes. Kushina packed all the items in a scroll which also worked as a pocket dimension. She almost emptied the shrine. After an hour they left the shrine. Kushina activated the seal around it to keep it safe. They were walking with a slow pace and it had been an hour already. Naruto looked up at his mother. "So where are we headed first?" Naruto asked, and Kushina looked down at him. "Well, it will take several days to reach Uzugakure, so we will have to decide a route in order to make our journey more comfortable," Kushina said with a thoughtful look, and Naruto looked up. "So what have you thought?" Naruto asked again. Kushina stopped and pulled out a map and laid it on the ground. Let's see," she mumbled and read the map. There were two routes she could take, one from Ugakure and other from Wave. But she did have little to no knowledge about U country, so she settled on the Wave route. "Well, it seems we will head towards Wave country," Kushina said after a minute and folded the map, and they again started to walk. After their first day ended, Kushina saw Naruto yawning and his eyelids were dropping again and again. He had been walking for a whole day. Kushina smiled and put a hand on his head, making him look up. Kushina smiled and lifted him in her arms and decided to find a safe location and rest for the night and move early morning. Kushina found a place under a large tree and set up her tent there. She unsealed a futon and a blanket from the scroll and laid it on the ground. Naruto immediately sprawled on the futon and his lights were out in seconds. Kushina smiled. He was so tired that he didn't even whine for his regular drink from his mother, and she was sure that in the morning it was going to be hard for her. He wouldn't let go of her breasts for at least an hour. Lying beside him, she cuddled with him, and in a matter of seconds she was asleep. In a mild-lit room, stood three figures: Konan, Madara and Pain. Madara had his finger around Konan's neck and she was gasping for breath. "I asked, what were you thinking when you decided to be your own leader?" Madara growled and looked back over his shoulder when Pain put a hand on his shoulder. "Leave her and you are not the leader," Pain said in a voice that had no place for arguments. Madara let go of her and stomped to the side. Pain looked at the woman who was her friend for a long time. "Konan, will you tell me why did you suddenly decided to not obey my order?" Pain asked in a neutral tone. After getting her breath even, Konan looked at her longtime friend. That woman Kushina wasn't with the J Jinchuriki at that moment, so ITH thought that I would. She stopped when Pain turned back and walked to his seat and sat down. "Konan, you know very well that this mission is very important for us and one mistake can be proven hazardous for our plan. So consider this as your first and last mistake, Pain said, and Conan's eyes widened. Would Nagato really kill her if she failed? A look of fear mixed with sadness appeared on her face, which didn't go unnoticed by Pain, but things like that were not of importance for him anymore. I will not repeat my mistake again, Conan said, regaining her wits, and looked at Pain. He nodded and she sunshined. Pain turned to Madara. So how is our recruiting coming along? Did you find anything of promise? He asked, and Madara nodded. I have found some people, he said, and took his own seat. And they are perfect for our purpose, but that Kakuzu guy killed his partner, Madara said, and Pain raised an eyebrow. Madara stood up. He has a heart complex, Madara said, and disappeared, leaving a confused Pain. Well, then I also should go for the meeting with Tsuchikage, he mumbled and disappeared. Kushina's eyes snapped open when the sound of rustling fell in her ears. She didn't move and tried to hear the sounds as she wrapped her arms around Naruto sleeping above her. She concentrated on the sound and was able to hear some words like plan, attack, force, and the last word made her eye widen, Konoha. It seemed like whoever they were, planning to attack on Konoha. Well, she knew it was inevitable. Sooner or later other villages will get a wind of what is going on in the village, and after knowing that a powerful village has come down to its knees, they will try to take it out of the picture. But then why did they wait for 5 years? Maybe they were planning for something big. But still, it couldn't have taken so much time, or they are planning something else, like something big, very very big, something like another Uzumaki tragedy. Kushina's eyes widened in fear as the memories rushed back to her head. She closed her eyes to control her emotions. When she opened her eyes, they met with 2 blue orbs. Kushina, realizing that she had tightened her grip on Naruto, which waked Naruto up. But before Naruto could say anything, Kushina hushed him, and they both now heard them talking. Man, don't you think Tsuchikage-sama is being cruel? I mean what he said about women, but anyway, if you look at it from other perspective. My is already getting hard just from thinking of banging those huge-titted women, one of the men said. Another man laughed. You are right about that. I have heard that Konoha women have large breasts, man. I want to them so badly, he said with a lecherous look on his face. Another man, supposedly the captain, looked at the first man. It's not being cruel. It's paying back for what they did to our 1,000 men, and even if Yellow Flash is dead, our informant had solid proof that he had a wife, though we are not sure about if he had any child. Anyway, I can only agree with you on one point, that we shouldn't capture the clan matriarch and heiress to breed them in our village and other villages, and any other potential woman too. But whatever, it's for our villages and they are the orders of our cages. We will be traitors if we don't obey the orders. And the man turned towards others with an intense look in his eyes. And you know I hate disobeying orders, and I will sell my soul to devil for the good of my village, he finished, and everyone nodded. Kushina heard him, and now her suspicions were proved right. It had taken them so much time because they were planning for another Uzu tragedy. Though Kushina was confident in her security system around Konoha, but still it would not be able to hold 3 villages at once for long. Suddenly she heard someone coming towards the tent. She missed their conversation in the meantime of her thoughts. Hey, is someone awake? She heard a man's voice. He must be thinking that everyone is sleeping in the tent, Kushina thought. Hey, we are out of our water supply. Can you give us some if you have water? He said again. Kushina then decided to answer. Who are you? She asked a usual question of the same situation she was in. Kushina lightened up a lamp as she heard him. We need some water to drink. Do you have some? He asked again. Kushina turned towards him, and his eyes widened when he saw her beauty in the dim light of lamp. She looked like a hot and white goddess wrapped in a white shirt. His eyes wondered. Kushina looked at him and narrowed her eyes. Where the hell are you looking at? Is this how you ask someone for something? This rudely? Kushina snapped as she glared at the man. By looking at his Hittite, she now knew their village, Iwagakure. Her actions, whatever they could be in future, she needed to know their plan first, and for that the person in front of her was a right, since she could tell from his voice that he was the one who said Tsuchikage cruel earlier and also to bang Konoha women. I am sorry, Mom. Please forgive me for my rudeness, but we are in urgent need of water, the man apologized. Kushina stood up and smiled a fake smile. It's okay. You can have water, she said as she opened a bag and pulled out a water bottle and handed it to the man. The man bowed. Thank you very much, he said, though one water bottle wasn't enough for all of them. Kushina smirked inwardly. Why don't you go and give it to your friends and come back here? I can give you one more bottle, Kushina said as she stretched her hands upwards. The man smiled gratefully and bowed to her. Thank you very much, he said, almost groveling. He rushed out immediately happily. Kushina snorted. Fools, she muttered. They thought she was some civilian and happily took water she gave them, but they didn't know that there was poison in the water. After 5 minutes the man came rushing back and entered in the tent. Kushina sat on the futon with a bottle in her hands and a cup in front of her. She had opened her shirt's 2 buttons and was showing ample amount of cleavage and sat there only in her shirt and pant. Naruto sat aside in a dark corner observing his mom as she initiated her plan to make him tell her their plans. When the man had gone to give water to his fellow shinobis, Kushina had told him what was going on and to keep quiet and observe her how she make him tell. She had told him that when you are a shinobi you have to go to any lengths to steal what you want and you should never believe anyone, be it a shinobi or civilian, when on a mission, and from his observation he could tell that the man had already made a mistake believing his mother. Kushina smiled at the man. Please sit and have some drink, she said, smiling a seductive smile. The man halted in his tracks. Now it seemed a bit suspicious to him. It was one thing to give water bottle to him, but now it seems like a scene from a bar or something like that, and of course his eyes couldn't forget to ogle her half-clothed breasts. The man looked at her Y form with suspicious eyes. What are you doing? He asked as he put a hand on his kunai pocket. Kushina immediately took control of the situation. Well, my father and my husband respect shinobis very much. Whenever they comes in our village, my father provides them everything in free, like living, food and other facilities, and sometimes, he also provides some. Kushina said as her voice turned husky in the end, and the man could guess what she was insinuating. And they expect same from me. Kushina finished and winked at him. Now why don't you make yourself comfortable? Kushina said in a low voice. The man blinked and nodded unconsciously as he walked and sat down in front of Kushina and lifting the cup drank the liquid. His eyes widened. This is wine and it tastes amazing, he said a little loudly in shock. He smirked inwardly at his luck. He was getting wine and a woman for himself in the middle of the forest. He gulped in once and emptied the cup. It's a special treat for you, Kushina said in a sweet voice, making man blush. Why? He stuttered. The wine had already started its work on him. I heard you earlier talking with your friends. You really are a nice man, she said as she poured another cup. The man blushed more. T-shank y show, he said in a slurred tone. Shit, Kushina mumbled. She couldn't have him drunk already. She decided to give it a break. By the way, what were you talking about? I heard some words and I guessed that it was some war or attack. She started her investigation. The man had already drunk. You are absolutely right, he exclaimed loudly. Well, it doesn't matter, his friends must have been already dead by now. And then the man told him everything she wanted to know, what they had planned and what they were planning. Who were involved and how much they were involved, when they were going to attack and how. He told her everything. Kushina's eyes were widest when he finished. So that's it. This is what we were talking about, he said as he put his cup down and looked at Kushina, her body. The bottle was empty. The man leaned towards Kushina and put his hand on her thigh. So should we have some fun next? He said with leering eyes and a lecherous grin. But just as he moved his hand up, his blood ran cold and a feeling of dread enveloped him. His eyes ran around the area and landed on a figure behind Kushina. The man cowered back. Monster, He screamed when he saw two blue eyes in a black miasma glaring at him like pulling his soul, ing its essence away. The man felt suffocation. He started to pant. He looked at Kushina, who was just sitting there calmly. She knew who it was, but she didn't know why the man called him a monster. She turned back and looked at her son. He seemed normal to her, but when she looked carefully she could see the aura around him, a blue aura, just like her red aura when she was in her new form. She noticed that he was looking angry for something. Kushina turned towards the man and stood up and walked towards the man. The man looked up. Why you? Who are you? He asked with fear. The fear cleared his mind of any alcohol, and now he understood that they were tricked and played. He immediately thought of his friends and his eyes widened in realization, but next moment his fear turned to anger. You bitch. You played me, he said, growling. Kushina stood there looking at the man pensively, thinking what to do with him. He was going to die, that much was sure, but she was thinking something else, about which she wasn't sure if she should do it or not. In the end she decided to not do it, since Naruto was just 5 years old and killing someone at that age might affect him, and he was going to die any minute by the poison in the wine. She looked at the man. You can go, she said to the man, and the man immediately rushed out, but just as he came out he fell down with a thud and died. Kushina sighed and looked at her son. We need to move now, she said, and Naruto nodded. The dawn was already upon them. 10 minutes later they were on the road to Wave, but before that they didn't forget to collect usable things from the Iowa shinobis. Half-hour later Kushina looked at Naruto, who was already sleepy and was rubbing his eyes continuously. They continued to move for a while, and when Kushina was sure that the trail of the murder would not reach to them, she decided to let Naruto sleep a bit. They sat down under a tree on a sheet. Kushina sat there and Naruto fell asleep immediately. Kushina looked around and noticed that the sun was about to rise. Kushina thought about the information she got from the man. Iwa, Kumo and Kiri had started to plan this attack few months later, Sandame's death, or when they got the wind of the death of Hiruzen, Danzo and Fugaku, 3 major powers of Konoha. They knew the village was weak, and even if they took years of planning, it would take Konoha much more time to get its power back. So they decided to repeat an Uzu tragedy and annihilate Konoha from history. So they decided to start from Konoha resources and contacts. They have cut all resources of Konoha, and less number of merchants started to coming Konoha. Either they were killed on the way or became allies with other. Anyway, it had gotten its effects on Konoha's markets, hence its economy. Why I never noticed it, she mumbled to herself. Maybe she didn't live in Konoha, that's why, but Anko never mentioned it to her. She felt bad now for taking all that money from Shikaku. What happened happened, she thought. The other villages were just waiting for the time when Konoha would be in no way able to hold grounds in the attack, but she knew that it will take more time. What should I do now? Should I help or just go my way? She thought with confliction. Naruto stirred in her lap and she came out of her thoughts. She noticed it was morning already. She was thinking for quite a while. She looked down and saw him pushing his tiny fists in her breast just like a baby when he is hungry. Not now, sweetie. I need to take a shower before that. I am sweaty, Kushina said with soft eyes, and Naruto pouted. Let's move, she said, and they again started to move towards Wave. How long, mommy? Naruto whined. It's been several days since they left Konoha, and Naruto was getting frustrated. He didn't even train except some oral lessons on chakras and sword handling. He looked up at his mother. When will you train me, mommy? It's been so long, Naruto whined, pulling on her hand. Kushina looked down at him. He was looking at her with his blue eyes. Kushina smiled but didn't say anything and continued to walk. She stopped suddenly and looked at her son. I got an idea for your training, she said loudly, and Naruto's eyes filled with excitement. Really? What is it? He asked with a big smile. Okay, first tell me what Anko taught you when I was busy, Kushina asked. She had told Anko to train Naruto when she was busy with the barrier. She had told her what to train him. Anko-chan told me about chakra, how it works and how we do jutsus. She told me that chakra control is very important to do any jutsu, Naruto said, counting on his finger, which made Kushina smile. What else? She asked. She made me do some exercises like tree walking and water walking, and Naruto said with a thoughtful look. Kushina giggled and kissed his cheek. Okay, that much control is enough for our plan for your training, she said, and then a clone appeared beside her. Naruto looked at them with wide eyes. Wow, two mommies, he exclaimed in shock, and then his eyes fell on the two pair of breasts full of fresh milk for him. He started to drool. Naruto, concentrate. Kushina chided him. Kushina then taught him how to make shadow clones and how it will help them. Wow, Mom, that's amazing. You mean less work and more result? Naruto said with stars in his eyes. He immediately got to work and started to practice to make clones while Kushina sat there observing him and correcting him whenever he made a mistake. She knew it was a difficult task and the chance for him to make a clone least to none in some hours. After 2 hours he got it and was able to make a clone, which made Kushina's eyes big and wide in shock. Wow, he did it. Was he so eager to learn the shadow clones, she thought, and standing up walked to him and his clone, and after observing it she nodded and gave an A. After Kushina passed Naruto's clone he fell, but Kushina caught him and wrapped her arms around him. He was already asleep from exhaustion. She walked to the tree she was sitting earlier and sat down, placing Naruto on her lap. Naruto woke up after an hour and his eyes met with 4 pairs of violet eyes staring at him. His eyes widened in shock. Oh my god, 4 mommies, Naruto exclaimed as he sat up and started to drool with hearts in his eyes. Kushina's eyes widened hearing him. What the? Where did you learn that word, you brat? Kushina asked in shock as she folded her arms under her breasts, mildly glaring at him and an indignant look in her eyes. Naruto looked down when he saw his other getting angry. Anko-chan, he said in a low voice. Kushina looked at Naruto with blank face and then sighed. I should have known. That girl, already having an effect on Naruto, she said to no one, and then grabbed Naruto's shoulder and looked deep in his eyes. Naruto, I don't want to hear that word again from your mouth or else, she said as she stared at Naruto mildly. Naruto nodded and was still looking down. Kushina's face softened immediately and she hugged her son. After few moments they separated and Kushina looked at him with a smile. Okay, now, listen to me carefully, Kushina said, and Naruto nodded. Okay, he said as he looked at his mother. Now, you make 3 clones and my 3 clones will taught them one-on-one. My first clone will teach your first clone Kenjutsu, second clone will see your taijutsu, and third clone will teach you all that is related to chakra, and while my clones train your clones we will head to our way, she explained to Naruto, and Naruto was too eager to start training with his 3 mothers. But before that, let's see your chakra nature, Kushina said as she pulled out chakra paper and put it on the ground. Okay, feed your chakra in the paper, she said to him and observed. Her eyes widened a little and her suspicions proved right. He had all the affinities, all 5. Kushina had 3 affinities, wind, water and fire, but after her chakra mixed with Kyuubi's she equipped all affinities, and now when Naruto had all affinities, she knew the effect of her chakra and milk had already done their work. It was a matter of time when she will see the signs. Naruto was a little confused by the multiple reactions of paper like splitting, burning, wetting, etc. Kushina cleared his confusion. Okay, Naruto, you have all the affinities there is, Kushina said, and Naruto's eyes widened. Anko had told him about affinities and now he had them all. So let's get the training on, ladies, Kushina shouted, and other Kushina came forward. Then with 3 pairs of Naruto and Kushina, his training started, and original Naruto and Kushina made their way to Wave. They entered in the Wave country by a boat, and after paying the man they decided to have something in their stomachs. Naruto was getting impatient for his fill, but Kushina strictly told him that no milk till night. They found a local restaurant and after ordering their food they sat down and ate in peace. The food is good, Kushina said as she looked at Naruto, and just as Naruto opened his mouth Kushina spoke. I am talking about this food, she said pointing down by her finger. Naruto nodded. Yeah, it's good, but their ramen is hardly close to the level of Ichiraku, Naruto remarked, and Kushina chuckled. Well, you are right about that, Kushina noted as she leaned back in her chair with a mouthful of her food. Her eyes turned towards the entrance of the restaurant and she saw a tall black man enter inside. He walked straight to the reception and asked her something and walked towards the table where his comrades were already sitting. Kushina noticed that they were 5 people including the man just entered. They were all wearing civilian clothes, but their behavior was far from that of civilians. Kushina shushed Naruto and pointing towards the group told him to observe the group. Naruto looked at the group and observed them for few seconds and then turned to his mother. They are not civilians, he concluded, and Kushina, a little surprised, nodded. Good, at his analysis. There were 2 black men including the man just entered, and other 3 seemed different. Kushina could tell from their color, facial features and body language and clothing that they were from different villages. But why would they gather here in Wave? She thought and her eyes widened. Have they already started their attack? Was the group I killed was their first infantry? She thought with an apprehensive look. Kushina then again shushed Naruto when he was about to say something, and sharpening her hearing she decided to hear them. Captain, she infiltrated Suna yesterday without any problems and is ready for next orders, first man, which seemed from Kiri, reported. Good. Our 10-man cavalry is ready to leave for Wave from Iwagakure, second man who seemed from Iwa reported. Good. Captain, our last weapon consignment will arrive in 3 days by sea, third man who seemed from Kumo reported. Good. Captain. We haven't gotten any reports from our 2nd Infantry that headed to Konoha a while back, last man reported. The man who had recently entered, the leader, Kushina guessed, closed his eyes for a moment. Did you send anyone to check? He asked with closed eyes. No, Captain, the man replied. Then send someone immediately to check on them, Captain said and stood up. Everyone is dismissed, he said and started to walk out followed by the others. Kushina watched him going out and she immediately stood up and dragged Naruto with her. Mo-wa. He was baffled and his ramen was hanging from his mouth. Kushina dragged him out and started to trail 5 men. She stalked them for a minute on a straight path, hiding behind the wooden carts and trolleys. After 5 minutes the road ended and then the 5 men whispered something to each other and then shunshined in 5 directions. Shit! Kushina cursed as she stomped on the ground. She was found out. Naruto looked up at his mother's frowning face. He wiped his mouth of off ramen juices and tugged on her hand, catching her attention. What? She said, almost yelling. Naruto looked at her with raised eyebrows. You know, we should finish our food, he said, and Kushina stared at him with a blank face. She sighed and shook her head. Let's go and find a place to stay for the night, she said, and grabbing his hand walked to a decent-looking hotel. Ah, I am so tired and sleepy, Naruto groaned as he flopped on the bed face first. Suddenly his eyes widened and his head throbbed in pain, and same happened with Kushina, but she managed it just by closing her eyes. After few seconds they calmed down and Kushina was immediately by Naruto's side. Are you okay? She asked as she pulled his head on her lap. Naruto exhaled deeply. I am fine. It's nothing comparing to the excitement I am feeling from how much I learned today, he said, but Kushina still had a worried expression on her face. Naruto sighed. Okay, then let me drink your milk and I will be alright, and I haven't had my favorite food for 2 days already, Naruto said as he pushed his finger in her breasts, making Kushina sigh. You are alright now, she said, but now she could feel the ache in her breasts from the milk. They were swollen from the milk. Kushina sighed again. Okay, she said, and before she knew it she was down and Naruto on her. She closed her eyes in hopes to not letting any escape. The way of his suction has become hard from all the training he was doing and his hand were already started to get rough. Kushina opened her eyes after few hours. Both of them had fallen asleep. Kushina noticed that her was still in Naruto's mouth. She slowly retracted back and sat up. She kissed his forehead and stood up. She had some work to do. She went in the bathroom to clean up and came out in her bra and panties. She pulled out her cloths from the bag. A black shinobi pants with black shirt and a dark blue jacket over it and a mask over her face. She took her sword and was ready to move out. She looked at her son, sleeping peacefully, a pillow in his arms, hugging it like it was his mother. Kushina's eyes softened. She moved over the bed and placed an affectionate kiss on his cheek. Just a few hours, I will be back before you know it, she whispered to his sleeping form and after placing some security seals, disappeared. Kushina appeared on the edge of the fence of the top roof of the hotel. She knew where she will found the information she was seeking because if shinobis are gathering in Wave then it was hard to hide it from authorities of Wave. So there must be some records of their arrival in Wave in tourist registration department or if there is no record then she will have to find their meeting place by other means. Kushina then disappeared again and appeared at the roof of the tourism office. The security wasn't that much tight in the building. Well, let's get to work, she said to herself and jumped down appearing behind the guard and immediately slitting his throat. Two men sat on a large boulder which was around 10 feet high. One had a tri-blade scythe and other had a normal weapon but he had green eyes. They were looking down at the swarm of the shinobis who were ready to go to Konoha and strike. Both of them had been hired by the 3 cages of the 3 villages to destroy the higher level opponents. They had a bored expression on their faces. But suddenly the man with the scythe perked up and smiled sinisterly. Hey Cuckoo, do you sense that? He asked, making the other man's eye twitch in annoyance. It's Kakuzu you. Next time remember it or I will kill you, and yes I can sense that, he replied in a threatening voice. Come on man, I was joking, but anyway who's going? He asked and Kakuzu narrowed his eyes. We both will go, he said, making Hidan laugh out loud. Are you crazy? One of us is more than enough for him, he said nonchalantly. Kakuzu narrowed his eyes. First of all it's a woman and second you are idiot who can't sense her monstrous chakra. No, it's not chakra, it's something else. No, it's chakra but quite different, he deduced from his senses. Hidan looked at him with a serious expression. Gone his nonchalant persona. Okay, we should go before this whole cave is destroyed. We won't get paid if it happens, he said with a smirk as he looked at Kakuzu. Then there must be a huge bounty on her head, he said and stood up. Kushina stood in front of a cave which was located at the border of Wave in a dense forest. She had come to know about the cave from her search in tourism department. She had also come to know that all the infantry of 3 villages was staying here in this cave. Their weapons and shinobis were operating from that cave. She had already planted the explosive tags all around the cave and inside the entrance. She knew that they had a seal on the entrance as an alarm, so she decided to stay out. Kushina made a hand sign and suddenly 2 men appeared before her, and 1 moment later the cave exploded, making a tremendous earthquake shaking whole Wave. Man, we were lucky. Hidan giggled and looked at Kushina. Come on Kakuzu, she doesn't look like what you described to me. She is just a... He stopped when the woman in front of him disappeared completely. Kakuzu gritted his teeth in anger. She teleported. Now we can't even trace her chakra trail and we even lost out bounty, he growled, and Hidan just stood there contemplating his partner's words. It was around 1 a.m. in the night when Kushina appeared in her hotel room and heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Naruto sleeping still clutching the pillow. Kushina smiled affectionately and removing her black cloths packed them and wore new cloths. A ninja pant and a green t-shirt which accentuated her 2 large breasts as a 2 melons inside her t-shirt. She wore a jacket over it and zipped it. They had to leave because she knew both the man wouldn't take much time finding her. She didn't fight earlier because after assessing their strength she knew it would be a messy fight. She moved to the bed and slowly separated the pillow from his clutches. He whined and Kushina replaced the empty space by herself and he immediately clutched her. Kushina sighed contentedly, but they had to move fast. So she tried to wake him up and he groaned after a few attempts. He slowly opened his eyes and met with her mother's gleaming violet eyes. What? He muttered. Kushina smiled. I am sorry to break your sleep, but we have to move, she said apologetically, making him whine in sleepiness. Don't worry, I will give you a reward later for being a good boy, she offered with a fake annoyed expression which Naruto knew well, known as fake. As much as I want and as long as I want? Naruto asked with a pout. Kushina sighed. Okay, now get ready, we are leaving in 2 minutes, Kushina said, and Naruto nodded. Naruto then leapt up from her lap and went into the bathroom, and meanwhile Kushina packed everything. After 2 minutes they were on the road and Kushina could see several people on the road. There was a kind of panic in them. Kushina realized that it was because of the earlier explosions which shook Wave. They reached the docks and Kushina looked around for any boat to leave. She found one after a minute of search and moved towards it. A man stood there closer to the boat. He was leaning against the boat but stood straight when he saw a red-haired woman with a child coming towards him. Is your boat ready? She asked, and he nodded. Yeah, but where to? He asked. Island of Uzushiogakure, she answered, and the man stiffened. Well, I can't take you there, but I can leave you a few miles before the place and it will cost you dearly, he said, and Kushina thought for a moment and then climbed in the boat. In 1 minute, they were in the sea. Naruto and Kushina sat in the back room of the boat. Kushina sighed. The man had told her that it would take around 2 hours to reach there. So they had enough time to rest. She looked at her son. You can sleep again if you want, Kushina said, and Naruto said he wasn't sleepy anymore. Kushina nodded as she looked out the window. 2 hours and she would be in her motherland where she was born, she thought, and with a smile closed her eyes. Suddenly Kushina's eyes flew open when she felt the murderous intent. She immediately grabbed Naruto and jumped out of the window on the water surface and skidded on the surface. She looked at the boat as it split in half by a large tri-blade scythe connected by a metal wire. She looked at the 2 men. They were the man she left standing out of the cave. She looked at them and they looked at her as she stood straight with Naruto beside her. Well, I didn't expect to find you so soon, and, oh Josh, and you even have a child, he said as he looked at Naruto with glee, but Naruto glared back at him, making him chuckle. But don't worry. I won't kill him. I will kill you first and then sacrifice him to Joshin. He likes children very much, he declared as he gripped his scythe. Kakuzu stood beside her son calmly, analyzing the situation and her opponents, and then she sighed and sat down on one knee and looked at Naruto. Baby, she started. They are strong, Mom, he said, making Kushina nod with pride. He was smart for a 5-year-old kid. Yeah, that's why. Will you be able to fight those 2? Naruto asked, interrupting her again. Kushina sighed. She had fought many men in the past who were filthy strong and she came out victorious. They were even stronger than those 2 she was facing now, but at that time she was alone. She fought without any inhibitions like a monster she was, but now at the moment she couldn't fight, losing her inhibitions because while fighting she also has to protect her son. She couldn't completely lose herself in the fight. Well, I don't know if I can defeat those 2. But Naruto saw it, the reluctance and fear in her eyes and on her face. It wasn't for those 2, neither for herself, was she worried about him and his safety. Naruto smiled, falling in love deeper with his mother, though he already loved her more than anyone in the world, but still he didn't know these feelings. He lifted his hand and put it on his mother's cheek, and the gesture itself made Kushina almost melt. She could have if they were alone. She could have melted right then and there. Her eyes shut down automatically and a moment later opened them. Mom, you are worried about me, right? He asked, and Kushina tried to deny it, but Naruto just smiled. It's okay, Mom. Everything will be alright. Don't worry about me. I am your son. No one can do anything to me. He stopped and caressed her cheek with his little thumb, which sent delicious shivers in Kushina's body. Just go and show them your power. Don't hesitate, mom, because your son wants to see you without inhibitions, he said in a different tone Kushina had never heard. She realized he was not just smart but more than that. She looked at him with half-lidded eyes, and at that moment he was talking like he wanted her to bear herself in front of him. Like he wanted to see this uninhibited side of her, how she looked when she lost all her inhibitions, and it made her body tremble with the feelings she had forgotten. She could feel the warmth in her stomach and going down. She breathed heavily as she looked at her son. Naruto was still smiling. If you worry about me, you won't give it your all, so go without any worry and hesitation, he said, and slowly leaning towards her face put his lips on hers, and Kushina's half-lidded eyes closed completely. She could feel it, the pleasure of being free, coursing through her body. Her whole body trembled in desire, and before she could lose in it, Naruto broke the kiss, bringing her out of the reverie. Kushina opened her eyes and looked at her son. She sighed and smiled. What the hell she was doing? His hand was still on her cheek. She put her hand on his and turning her head kissed his palm and brought his hand close to her breasts and looked at Naruto. Your mommy will not lose, she declared, and Naruto smiled brightly. Okay, so stay behind me, she commanded, and Naruto walked behind her and made a bit of distance between them. Kushina turned towards the two men. Sorry to keep you waiting, she said and smiled. She was going to win no matter what, and she wondered how soon she will finish it if she transformed, but whatever, she was going to fulfill her son's wish and would fight without any inhibitions. She looked up and closed her eyes as she unsheathed her sword. She reminisced the old times, old Kushina, who was a monster who could kill opponents much times stronger than her. Then she opened her eyes, and for a moment Hidan's eyes widened, and then he smiled maliciously. He was going to have fun today. It had been a long time since he had gone all out. He looked at Kushina and Kushina looked at him. And then she disappeared and appeared behind Kakuzu, catching him off guard, and swung her sword down, but it was blocked by the scythe as their eyes met. First time in his life Hidan was serious, because neither he nor Kakuzu could keep up her earlier speed. It was like she just teleported behind him. Kakuzu gritted his teeth. He hasn't felt this feeling since he had fought with that Hashirama. Kushina swung her sword down again and Hidan parried it again. Then Hidan swung his scythe in a counterclockwise direction, taking Kushina's head in its periphery, but Kushina ducked, and at the same time Hidan let go of the metal wire, passing over Kushina's head, and just as Kushina stood he pulled his scythe back towards the back of Kushina's head, and Kushina had to duck again. As the scythe traveled to its owner, Kushina ran with it and reached Hidan before the scythe. She thrust her sword in his abdomen, making him step to the right side. Kushina immediately swung her sword to the right, and this time Hidan had to block by a kunai. His scythe returned to his grip and they made a considerable distance between. Hidan forget about drawing her blood and focus on killing her, Kakuzu said, making Hidan irritate. Shut the hell up, he shouted and turned to Kushina. He never had a problem with his big weapon, but she was too fast, which made his weapon a disadvantage for him. He was surprised that her speed was greater than his. Okay, enough playing, he muttered, and his scythe started to shrink and its size reduced. Its tri-blades shifted inside, giving it a shape of small spear. And then he disappeared and appeared to Kushina's side, thrusting his spear into her head, making Kushina lean backward as the spear went over her body. Suddenly she sensed another attack and she immediately spun on her heels to the right to dodge a stream of fire from a mask attached to a glob of black strings. Her head turned to the other man. But she again had to bring her sword up to block Hidan's spear coming for her head. Fighting with two S-class opponents was hard. And then she felt like someone grabbed her legs as the water traveled up on her legs, making her feel creepy. She again blocked Hidan's spear at her stomach by her sword. It wasn't going to work fighting two types of attacks, short-ranged and long-ranged. She closed her eyes and her sword started to glow in a white aura. She immediately swung her sword in right direction towards Kakuzu, sending a big wind slash towards him with sonic speed, splitting the water in half and creating a large wave towards Doc. The attack in its speed caught him off guard and hit directly to his chest as the blood spurted from it. He couldn't comprehend the speed of the slash. Two more slash came soaring towards him and hit him in front, making a plus sign on his front. Kakuzu spit blood and gritted his teeth. He immediately stood straight and brought out his other two masks, which symbolized wind and earth. He already had two masks out, fire and water. Kushina's legs freed when she attacked Kakuzu, and next moment she saw Hidan's spear coming for her face. She turned her head to avoid the sharp edge as the spear came for her face. Then he blocked his right swing by her sword. They looked at each other with glaring eyes as a drop of blood trickled down her left cheek. Still, she was a bit late to avoid the attack. She grabbed Hidan's spear as it came again for her face and kicked him in the stomach and then kneed his face when he doubled over, making him stagger back. Then Kushina immediately leapt back several times to avoid hits from the fire and wind mask. And then a whirlpool appeared below her and she jumped again, and her eyes widened when she saw a spiked floor of mud in her landing place. She sent wind slashes breaking the spiked floor, landing safely, and immediately parried several water bullets attacked by the water mask of Kakuzu. Kushina was surprised by the force behind the bullets. They were like a shotgun. Then next moment Kushina ducked down in the nick of time to save her head from Hidan's spear, but couldn't save some of her hairs. Before she could stand up, she sensed a large fireball coming down on her, making Kushina's eyes widen. She immediately rolled towards the side and barely dodged it, but it creating a large amount of steam. Kushina coughed and suddenly she felt a cut on her left thigh. It was deep as the blood gushed out. She knew it was Hidan's spear. She had made a mistake of getting distracted by the big fireball, which resulted in getting hit by spear. She narrowed her eyes when she saw one of the masks lowered down close to the water surface, and Kushina immediately stepped to the side again when she saw some disturbance inside the water at the place she was standing. She narrowed her eyes again at the water as she kept one of her senses for other attacks. Suddenly a hand made up of water shot out of the water and went straight for Kushina's face, but she was faster and alert, so she instantly cut the hand with her sword. Several more hands shot out of water and speeded towards Kushina. She ducked, dodged, cut several of them, then suddenly her eyes widened when she saw hundreds of water hands coming straight for her. But this time she didn't have time to duck or dodge, so she tried to cut them with her sword. She swung her sword like a with full speed and full force, but the force behind them wasn't any trivial force. It may not be equal to Kushina's force of swinging, but by combining hundreds of these forces it was way more than Kushina could handle. She cut some, but few of them passed. One hit her directly in the left shoulder, one hit her in the stomach making her gasp for air, another hit her inner thigh. Several passed grazing her arms and other body parts. When the attack stopped, Kushina stood there panting as she looked ahead. Her clothes were not torn up, but they were ripped here and there. Her body had taken a few hits, but after taking a few deep breaths she was ready to fight. She looked at Hidan and narrowed her eyes in confusion. He was standing there, but this time on a ply board which was a part of the boat. He stood there looking at her with a smirk. He had done something, she was sure of that. Her eyes turned to Kakuzu, who also stood there but was panting a bit more than Kushina. Then her eyes turned towards her son and a feeling of relief swept over her. He was standing there away from three of them, but she couldn't see the worry in his eyes. He had said everything would be fine and he knew it in his heart, but he couldn't help but worry. Kushina turned towards Kakuzu and leapt back when a hand of fire shot from another mask. It came to her with an incredible speed, but this time Kushina just sidestepped. She pointed her sword towards Kakuzu and water came up in the air and condensed in several water swords and sent them speeding towards Kakuzu. Kakuzu immediately erected a sand wall in front of him using his earth mask, blocking all her water swords, but his eyes widened when a large fire sword decimated the wall and hit Kakuzu's left shoulder, burning it. He screamed in agony as blood streamed out of the wound. His eyes widened when he saw two more fire swords soaring towards him. He immediately erected a water wall stopping the fire swords. Then, like before, he stitched his wounds immediately and he was new again. Kushina looked at him in wonder but was surprised when she dodged a burning kunai from Hidan. Then Kakuzu's fire mask released 2 fireballs towards Kushina and Kushina retaliated with her own 2 fireballs which hit Hidan's fireballs and 2 large explosions shook the entire water surface and sent the high waves towards the docks of Wave. It also created a steam fog. Then a fireball crashed into the water in front of her making a large splash in the water and uplifting the water in the air around Kushina. Before Kushina could leave her standing place a kunai came towards her which she dodged. Then suddenly her ears picked up a faint buzzing sound and her eyes widened. She, next moment jumped up and before she could come out of the water around her a lightning spear came soaring in the area around her which was filled with water and the spear exploded making everything around her a part of electricity. When the attack dissipated Kushina stood there panting heavily. This time her jacket was completely ripped and her t-shirt was also ripped on her shoulder and stomach. Her pants were burned at her knees and around shin area and she had blood trickling down from the side of her lips. She was getting tired and looking at her enemies she could tell they had left a lot of strength in them.